Buenas tardes. Buenas tardes a todos los que están.
Good afternoon. Please, those who are outside, come here. In Uruguay, where my students are outside, I go to look for them with a flag.
A veces. Bien.
My name is Stella Huertas, and I come from the Uruguay, from the University of the Republic of Uruguay. I am a veterinary, and I have been working for so many years. I am not going to tell you how many years I have been working as a veterinary. I was focused on meat at the beginning, and then in animal welfare. From 2009, the World Organization of Animal Health distinguished Chile and Uruguay and Mexico as the collaborative center in sustainable livestock systems. So the idea was to be a reference for the Americas. The universities were working in animal welfare, but now we have obtained a lot of good aspects on welfare and animal welfare. In Uruguay, we work a lot with cattle. We have a lot of beef heads, and we have even more beef than inhabitants in the country. The rest of production animals are also very important, but not as, swines in other countries. Having said that, and taking into account that I have a lot of experience in animal welfare, I was selected and invited to be here. I want to thank Rebecca and the rest of the organizers for the invitation. It is a great pleasure to be here today with you. And it is just like, a prize, an award for the effort that we have made, many of us who are here in this beautiful experience. It is an honor for me to introduce two speakers that are going to deliver presentations. I have just met one of them, and I was glad to meet him. And he's going to be in our country too. And the other one is Dr. Leopoldo Stuardo, who is really very well known to me, and it is a pleasure to introduce him in this table with these keynotes. Rafael Laguens is the president of the World Organization of Veterinaries. I read his curriculum, and we don't have time to mention his career. You can access to the Congress web page, but he has worked in many institutions and led many projects that have to do with the veterinary science in general. Rafael's presentation is going to be about the role of One Welfare in the profession of veterinaries, because you know that in Spain and in the rest of the countries, because you know that this is a global aspect, veterinary science is very important, and Rafael Laguens has the floor now.
El mando, para.
Buenas tardes a todos.
Good afternoon. It is a great pleasure, and thank you for that kind introduction. It's a pleasure to be here with all of these friends, and thank you to the One Welfare Organization. Tomás, who is the president of the Professional Association of Veterinary Science and Medicine in Burgos, and I've worked all my professional life near the city in the province of Burgos, so I feel like home. So I want to welcome all of you that come from other provinces and other countries. I will be speaking in Spanish because Rebecca asked me to do so. And I'm going to try explain what is the World Veterinary Association, the WBA, and what it does, as well as some of my ideas regarding One Welfare and animal welfare in general. So these gentlemen are the professors of the Veterinary College in 1863. They realized that by working on their own countries, they couldn't find solutions to the common issues they had. There were several diseases that were moving across frontiers, and international coordination and international regulations were needed. And look at them. Back at that time, in 1863, there was rabies, TB, and other diseases we're still fighting, including, among others, the diseases like the rinderpest that we've been able to eradicate. So as I was saying, association, the World Veterinary Association, is an association. It's a federation of associations, actually. We have 100 associations from each continent, and that includes more than 900,000 vets. I would also like to mention some of these associations for each continent, like the British Veterinary Association, the South African Veterinary Association, the American Veterinary Association in North America, the Concilio de Medicina Veterinaria in Latin America, the Japan Veterinary Medical Association in Japan, and the Australian Veterinary Association. These would be some of the best known, but there are many more. Our mission and vision is to be recognized and respected as a trustworthy and influential voice of international veterinary science and medicine. And it has to do with this because our main aim is to promote health, animal health and welfare, as well as public health through support, education, and collaboration. So we've always been talking about animal well-being and welfare as a critical element. Some of our strategic priorities, one is this animal welfare for 2020-2025, and the use of a regional way of using drugs and medication. These are key for the vets, not only when we're talking about production animals or company animals. These are priorities where we have 4 different working groups, one for animal welfare with several subgroups, another for veterinary education with a lot of subgroups as well, pharma stewardship with several subgroups, and One Health, again with subgroups. So I would like to mention here that there are people in this room that are part of this World Association, like Marinelli Cajiao. She was one of the counselors for the Latin America branch of the WBA. Yvonne Niño is also here, and she was born here. And she has been working these groups, and whatever I don't know, she will be able to reply to give you more information. And we will also have the president of the Veterinary Association of Chile. She will be a member of the WBA. She will be a new member, a relevant one, because now Chile is a fundamental country for the veterinary world. So what do we do? First of all, we have a world network that is activated, and as I mentioned, we try to grow it, to make it stronger in order to achieve those objectives at a global scale. As I mentioned at the beginning, vets know that just by working in our provinces, in our regions, or even our country or our continent is not enough. We need global actions. We also work with some position statements, like some press releases that have to do with our actions, some promotion and technical support, global collaboration with other industries, not only veterinary, and with other international associations like OMSA, the Animal Health International Organization, and the FAO, and several stakeholders. We compile data. We celebrate the World Day of Veterinary together with the ILO to create, together as well with OMSA, of this International Day that has been now celebrated in every part of the world with world congresses and meetings, and together with others like the One Health conferences with the human medical associations. I was just in a meeting in Rwanda a couple of days ago. We have awards, the International WBA Awards, with the support of CEVA, as well as the scholarship for the vet students. I'm adding this slide because in our association we define, or we include in our definition and our mission, the animal welfare. So I started to check what veterinary medicine means in the Oxford Dictionary and in Wikipedia, both in English, and you will see that we mostly focus on diagnosis, treatment, and prevention of disease. And in the Wikipedia, it's veterinary medicine is basically prevention, management, diagnosis, and treatment of the disease, disorder, and injury in animals. Animal welfare is never mentioned. I don't know if veterinary medicine definition should add this, or if you're talking about health, health is always linked to welfare. I don't know. It's one of the things that I think about. I included a photo at the very beginning of the first International Veterinary Conference that took place in history, in humankind history. And from there, the World Veterinary Association started, and we started adding a number since 1863. That was the first edition. But in this brief history of the OEA, which was the former name of the World Organization for Animal Health, it talks about this history, saying that the first veterinary conferences that started in 1863 were already talking about how to regulate the control of diseases, human diseases in this case. And through these reflection, these ideas, by the end of the 18th century, as well as the beginning of the 19th century, we built up a whole doctrine, a body of work that in 1924 was the founding stone of the World Organization for Animal Health, the OMSA, or WOAH in English. And that was the experience. One of the main diseases that got us all together all around the world, because the solution could only be world, is the rinderpest or cattle plague. That was what we talked about on that first veterinary conference, but also in the OIE. And it worked to think about this cooperation against the cattle plague. Veterinaries don't know what it is today because it was eradicated in 2011, and I just took my slides off the screen for some reason. Sorry about that. Another idea that I want to reflect upon. I use the documents, the papers of the World Organization for Animal Health a lot because, as well as the World Health Organization, because it's a global organization, and we are an international association ourselves with different private and non-profit associations from all over the world. We work in many areas that had commonalities. We don't work the same because the World Health Organization has something else to do, but we both had a world scope, and we deal with welfare. And I will talk more about animal welfare, but wait, because the role of the vet in animal welfare, and in one welfare particularly, the OIE, Leopoldo, I don't remember which one it was. It was in one of the recommendations, I think, about the minimum competencies, says those that had just graduated from veterinary medicine school, all of them have the responsibility of promoting animal health, welfare, and the veterinary public health. And I couldn't agree more with this quote, because any vet, it doesn't matter what they do specifically, always have to take care of animal health and welfare, and each one in its own field. This is, after all, a conference about animal welfare. But the World Organization for Animal Health, in the future trends of 22 paper, says that this veterinary public health is everything that adds to the physical, mental, and social welfare of the humans by using veterinary science, applying it, and based on the knowledge that these people have. So what we do is everything that the vets do to improve their health would be that veterinary public health. So here I would like to reflect upon one thing, and I would like to hear here or in the hallway the opinion of Leopoldo as well as the OMSA. Is there a clear definition of human health, but do we have a clear definition of animal health? I don't know if it doesn't exist. Maybe it does exist and I'm not aware. Maybe it's a provocative thought, a bit of a challenge, if you like, because it will include welfare, because you know that human health, in its definition, includes welfare. So should animal health definition also include welfare? Because we're talking about one health, one welfare. Now, I would like to go back to the 24th edition of the Congress. The first one was in 1863. Then in 1983, we have the 23rd edition in Montreal. And there, we were mostly worried about the cattle plague, as well as the transmission of a disease from one country to another. And there was another interest, quite general, in fact, from the society in general, but also the Veterinary International Society, and that was animal welfare. So that's why we created the Animal Welfare Committee next year. In 1988, inside the WBA. And in 1990, we agreed upon a statement which is called the Policy Statement on Animal Welfare, Wellbeing and Ethology. And now, if I continue to check history, because I like history, I realize that there were a lot of well-known names like Professor Fraser, Frank Lowen, and Mayer. Back at that time, Fraser was the North American Counselor of the WBA. The World Veterinary Association started to be very implicated in this kind of concept, the animal welfare, and since then, it has continued to do so. So this policy statement that started there has been drafted by this committee, which was formed by a group of specialists from all the continents. It was extremely diverse as a group. And there were several points that were being developed little by little. One had to do with ethology, animal welfare, the definition, the context, freedom of animals, the animal welfare in veterinary training. And we wanted that the training for the future veterinary professionals will be very specific. And we've been managed to do so. I think every single curricula in the world understand that this animal welfare is an important topic, and for that reason, based on our title or name of this conference that we are in today, we know that this is one of the key roles of what we're doing. So already in this policy statement, the vet was the person that knew about this. And this is now very trendy as a topic in Spain, as quite recently there has been passed a law for the protection of animals to ban animal experimentation, the way animals were handled, and euthanize, the protection of the wildlife. Well, I think as a profession, we need to keep on working in that respect, and in general animal protection. And this law was asking the vets to participate in the drafting of the act and asking other countries to have similar acts. In 1991, we had in that Congress a session. I think it was a streaming. I'm not sure if that's the right word in English, but it was a streaming about animal welfare and well-being and ethology. It was the first time that we did it. And these were some, as I was saying, it was Rio de Janeiro, 1991, very close to Uruguay. That was the first World Veterinary Congress that talked about animal welfare per se. And these were some of the conferences, of the speeches given. I've highlighted some, like, for example, animal rights, animal protection, veterinary medicine, and international public policy. We were already talking about how to assess, how to advise this animal welfare. And also we had these elements where veterinarians were considered catalysts between modern man and nature, biological research, beneficial interactions between veterinarians and animal welfare societies or charities. I think there's a lot of work to do there in this respect, because these are two stakeholders interested in the same concept, which is animal welfare, transportation of animals at a global animal welfare issue, animal welfare and education, animal research for the benefit of man, control and alleviation of pain and distress in animals, as well as welfare working farm animals. We also had control and legislation, cultural attitudes of society towards animals as an introduction. These were all topics that started to be mentioned internationally there in that conference, and since then we have kept on debating about them. I also talked with Leopoldo about when the World Veterinary Association started to be interested in this. And as we mentioned, the World Organization for Animal Health is mainly focused on animal health, but in the 1982 they started to have some information about animal well-being when they were talking about transportation by air of animals, because they were developing mostly transport by train or boat, but this was something more than just cargo. It was the animals and the diseases that could be associated to the transportation. And for that reason, it was important to control that transportation from the point of view of the animal welfare. And the vets had, again, a very important role to play. And by 2004, the land code of the World Organization for Animal Health already has a specific chapter on animal welfare. This would be the definition of the OMSA about this animal welfare in the land code that says this is the physical and mental state of an animal regarding the conditions in which this animal lives and dies. So we're talking about animal welfare that is both physical and mental. It cannot be divided. In our association, from the very first conference that we had when we started talking about animal welfare in 1991 in Rio de Janeiro, we have a working group The chair is Enid Stales, a doctor from Canada who works on different topics. We also have different position statements. These policy statements sometimes are still being developed. And one on which we're working is the animal welfare during an armed conflict, where not only people suffer, but also animals do. And what this group is doing is to try to find out how to help these animals in such terrible, dire situations when a conflict, an armed conflict starts in a place. Another element is the welfare of dogs and cats during transportation, but I would like to talk again about the armed conflicts. And here I have a letter that we received, I think it was in 1983, and there are 2 paragraphs. This is a vet from Canada, and he was telling me, while many scientific and professional bodies have addressed this subject, we're talking about the nuclear war, to be against nuclear weapons. As we veterinarians have fact today, as if the redirection of funds for veterinary and human healthcare and research to bomb building all these human healthcare and research to bomb buildings should be redirected because the budgets of the companies is being directed to one thing instead of another. But they said, we haven't seen anything yet. So in the final paragraph, he says, if we cannot bring ourselves to speak undividedly on behalf of the human race, and doctors are always doing this, let's at least make some noise on behalf of the animals facing a nuclear war. We should be doing something. This is a letter to the editor from 1983. There are many wars now, but in Europe, maybe Ukraine is the most relevant one. I went to Ukraine in June, and I saw there are vet clinics like this one that after a Russian attack become nothing more than a bit of rubble. So a place with pets and all the nurses trying to protect the health and welfare of animals due to the war has been completely destroyed. When we were preparing the last conference, and we had a summit for One Health, One Health, but what about the war? The war would be against One Health. And that's why I have to say that from the point of view of the animal well-being as well as the One Health, we need to solve these wars. The best way of solving a problem is to prevent it. I think if we can prevent war, it will be very useful. These are some of these policy statements, like the control of inadequately aggressive dogs, well-being of working equids, transportation of production animals, trade and welfare of the skin of the donkeys, the role of the veterinarians in the health of the aquatic animals, the production of aquaculture fishes, and as well as other elements. I didn't know how to say this in Spanish, but we had the population of animals as well as humanitarian sacrifice of animals in the biomedical research. We also have all of these different elements. We are still working on these topics. We also have several activities that are not always policy statements, like our international conferences. We have the Animal Welfare Seminar, where we deal with different topics. The last one was on pain management in livestock. We also have created campaigns with international association. Here it was with Donkey Sanctuary. I don't know if you're aware of it. There is a product in China called Ejiao, and they believe that the properties of this project are extremely beneficial and is produced from the skin of the donkeys. And for that reason, they buy a lot of donkeys and from all around the world. And what they do is that there is a clear animal welfare issue because of how they handle the animals, and then they basically take them off work in some areas where they're needed, and they put in danger the lives of the rural communities in these countries. So here it's a clear example of one welfare and one health, as well as the interconnection between all these different elements. Mohamed has already shown this, explaining what one welfare is. I don't want to repeat myself, so moving on. When we talk about the definition, because the definition was talking about the interconnection, and this is a more visual definition of One Health, but it will work for any aspect of different sectors, like One Welfare, and now the planetary health. And here you can see the different sectors, the human, the animal, the environment, the different parts of society, rural, urban, and the nomad communities, nationally, internationally, globally, and the inclusion factors, which would be access, equity, inclusion. How all of these works through communication, coordination, collaboration to achieve what we all want, which is one health and one welfare. And I think this explains how society should interact in these sections that includes every single sector to make sure that we all get what we need. Aside from that, Mohamed also showed this slide, which is the One Welfare umbrella. You're very familiar with it. Rebecca has done a great job because it is part of an article, a paper on the veterinary records, and the Agricultural Ministry in Ireland, if I'm not wrong, has also used One Welfare in some of the documents they have for animal welfare. So this work of highlighting the connection between the welfare of humans and animals is relevant, very relevant in our society. And in Spain, due to the Code of Animal Protection and Welfare, drafted by Maite Villalba, mentions the One Welfare framework as an approach that we need to have in legislation as well. And the university has already offered some integral management and control veterinary course for cats, wild cats, and we have been assessing all of these through the approach of One Welfare. And this is a very tool option to develop all these different concepts at different levels. Today, we've also talked about the University Masters of Global Health in Zaragoza, and there, One Welfare and human and animal health is another concept that can become an educational tool. I would like to conclude by talking about another of the activities that I will need to talk about here, which inside the World Veterinary Association, because I've already explained what we do as veterinarians, professionals, nationally, but also internationally. And from next year onwards, we will have these awards. We used to have only the animal welfare, but now that we have all this multi-sectorial, interconnected element with One Health and One Welfare, humans, health and welfare, animal health and welfare, now these awards are the animal welfare, the education and welfare, the adequate pharmacy stewardship, the best student of the year, and then one award, the One Health Award. And this year, well, next year, we will be giving it for the first time. And I think there's a lot of you that do a lot for the animal welfare in the world. You're here, so I want you to show your interest through your associations, because this is an award with a certain monetary prize. This will be awarded on the next Congress. I just took my slides off again. I don't know why. Can you put them on? Running out of time? Okay, well, as I was saying, in the next World Conference, we will grant these awards. Can I see it again? Oh, I turned it off again. So sorry. The final one is the best, is the prettiest. Don't you see? So it will be awarded in South Africa. Our next conference will be in South Africa, and everyone who wins will get the money, an invitation to the conference, plane ticket and hotel all included. So I hope that some veterinaries that you might know or might be here will decide to get this award in Cape Town. So we'll wait you there.
Muchas gracias, Dr. Rafael.
Thank you, Doctor. Let's see whether we have questions and answers. It was very interesting, but maybe I cannot see the audience, but maybe there are some questions. For those of you who are in streaming, aside from welcoming you virtually, I encourage you to ask the questions that you like, please, because we will see the questions here. Thank you very much for letting us know about the South Africa Congress. Let's put it in the agenda and try to organize a little bit the journey, the trip. If we don't have more questions, let's move on to Leopoldo Stuardo. As I said before, it is an honor to introduce once again Leopoldo. We known each other for so many years. Sorry, he comes from Chile. He's a veterinary who has worked in Chile and in official institutions. He has also worked for the WOAH, the World Organization for Animal Health, the WOAH. Leopoldo is going to introduce animals or animal welfare activities as a strategic commitment, and you have the floor. You can start. Thank you, Stella. And thank you for your introduction. It is true that we know each other, we have known each other for so many years, and we have worked in the same projects. I want to thank the organization of One Welfare, especially Rebecca, for the invitation, and also the World Organization for Animal Health for having invited us to show our projects and our activities and the relationship of our activities with the concept of One Health or One Welfare. My presentation is going to be in Spanish, though the slides, as you can see, are written in English. I don't know whether it is the best idea for my brain this time of the day. I can be mistaken, but let's try it. First of all, I'd like to come back to the debate that we mentioned today. The World Organization for Animal Health has a history that needs to be understood to complement what the other speaker has said. The organization was created in 1924 as the Office International de Sepitosie, the OIE, the former acronym. this was before the creation of the United Nations, in fact, and in 2003 we acquired or took the current name, the World Organization for Animal Health, but kept at that time the acronym. This was because the agreement that we signed in our organization. But last year, to have the same acronym and the same name, we took the new common acronym WOAH, or WOAH. So we try to create and modify different names, but today our organization is composed of 183 members. We provide a global coverage, and the headquarters of our organization is in Paris. We have 3 offices, regional and sub-regional offices in the 5 regions into which our organization is divided: Asia, Africa, the Americas, and the Middle East, and Asia Pacific too. We have signed different cooperation agreements with a lot of international organizations, like the World International Organization of Milk Production, for example. We have signed an agreement with the Animal Protection Coalition for Animal Welfare, and the World WAP, I don't remember the name now, the World Animal Protection, We also have more than 300 reference centers where we have the welfare animal centers. In the Americas, we have signed an agreement, and we are developing the possibility to help some universities so that they can include themselves as cooperation centers too. Taking into account our main activity, which is to establish standards for the improvement of animal health and welfare and veterinary public health worldwide, we have other activities, as I said before. The standards that we want to establish are recognized by the WTO within the SPS agreement as the international standard-setting organization for animal health and zoonosis to solve commercial-related conflicts. Animal welfare is not part of the SPS agreement of the WTO, which makes it difficult and also creates a debate on how animal welfare plays a role in commercial trade, in international trade. The WOAH standards contribute to fairer rules-based trading systems by supporting international harmonization. Now I'm going to talk about what it has to do with animal welfare. We said before that animal welfare within the organization is not something that started in 2000. The truth is that in the past we saw some efforts, especially with regards to the transport of animals, like in 1971, which were included in the terrestrial code. In 2000, the members of this organization created a mandate so that the organization could start creating standards that are included in Section 7 of the Terrestrial Code and Section 7 of the Maritime Code. Another important landmark is the development of the global animal welfare strategy of the organization. that took place later and was developed from lessons learned from actions taken at national and regional level, and aims to be a source of ongoing guidance. It was adopted in 2017. This strategy has a vision where animal welfare is promoted, respected, and tries to be implemented so that we can develop also human and financial welfare and sustainability. So as you know, in the past, there are concepts that were previously included and which are part of the strategy and what we call now One Welfare or One Health framework. The last part of this slide is about what today we have as a vision, because we want a world where the welfare of animals is respected, promoted, and advanced to also promote human well-being. These concepts started first in the Animal Welfare Conference held in Guadalajara, Mexico, and the Director General wrote the preamble of one book called or titled One Welfare, which was about a framework to improve animal welfare and human well-being. More recently, during the Global Animal Welfare Forum of the organization, and then I will mention it in more detail, the link between animal welfare and the UN Sustainable Development Goals is very important, and it's also something that we need to have to go together. The Global Animal Welfare Strategy of the organization is based on 4 strategic pillars. The first one is the development of standards, which is the core of our activity. We work mainly on standards, but we also have a pillar for capacity building and to help our members implement animal welfare standards and policies, which is a very important challenge that we have. We also have a pillar for the communication with governments, organizations, and the public in general. And then I will talk about an activity that we are developing, which is our Animal Welfare Global Forum. With regards to the standards that we develop, our organization has always played a role to protect animal health. Since animal health is key in animal welfare, our organization started to work in animal welfare too. Our standards have to be applicable for all the members or to all the members. We don't work just for Asia or for Europe. Our standards have to be useful and implemented in the different areas, regardless the socio-economical or religious context. These are just recommendations, guidelines. They are not a part of the regulation per se. Many countries think that they can copy and paste our standards, but the idea is that the members have the possibility to use what is part of the recommendation and adapt it to the different realities. It is also important to talk about human well-being. Human well-being has to support the producers and the production itself in farms and in the agriculture. I also want to talk about the concept that we are using today in the development of our standards. Sorry, here we have the concepts used in our organization to develop the standards. This is a summary of all the concepts that we use. If you take into account the old standards of our organization between 2000 and 2010, more or less, were related to the input to say what we had to do with regards to resources and management practices. But now the standards are more and more based on the outcome. The last chapters of the standards are about the outcome and about the response of the animal in front of different factors or aspects or inputs that animals have and how they react. That's why we have introduced things that have to do with the behavior of animals as part of the measurements that we do of animal welfare, especially in the last chapters of the standards, chapter that have to do with swine production, milk production, and also chapters that are being reviewed today. I just want to remember or to remind you that today we have 14 standards, part of section number 7 of the terrestrial code. Here you know that we are undergoing a review process of the first chapters, including the introduction, which is 7.1, which is about the introduction to the recommendations for animal welfare. Today we are, revisiting a little bit everything, and we will incorporate the concept of the 5 domains that is going to be debated and discussed with our members according to the request of the members of our organization and many institutions. We are also reviewing chapters that have to do with transport. So this is going to take place in November. By land, by sea, and by air. And now we are going, and we're having conversations with IATA, the IATA, with animal regulations that have to do with the transport of animals by air in planes or by plane. We have signed an agreement with them, and we are also members of the port, which is an organization working on this matter. We are reviewing the chapter devoted to slaughter of animals for human for disease control purposes. And we hope that next year we can adopt a new version of the chapter that is about the slaughter of animals for human consumption. That is also being reviewed, and that is going to be called animal welfare during slaughter processes. A new chapter that we have approved just recently is not related to production, but to the killing, to the use of reptiles for meat and leather. It is important to remember that in the aquatic animal health code, we have chapters that have to do with animal welfare too. And that includes aquaculture and not wild animals, but we have a specific chapter for slaughter and another for transport. The other pillars that I mentioned before include the implementation, and this is one of the most important ones and one of the most difficult ones, which is about how to support our members so that they can implement and adopt the recommendations that we include in the codes. That's why we have regional animal welfare strategies and platforms in the 5 regions in which we are present. In Africa, the organization doesn't have a direct participation, but the African Union took that responsibility, and we support them. We support these African unions so that they can identify regional priorities and can establish some rules or some governance related to the strategy. We also support them in the development of a strategic plan. Other regions are Europe, Asia Pacific, and the Americas, but it took us, a long time to have these regional strategies and platforms in Africa and in the Middle East. I wanted to mention something that we did with the International Standard Organization, which is about animal welfare management, and it was related to the certifications that we have today about animal welfare. The producers and the different organizations internationally demanded us to gather different standards or to collect the standards and harmonize a little bit the situation. So we worked with our partners, and as I said before, we have some cooperation agreements, and with the International Standard Organization to harmonize a little bit those standards that have to do with animal welfare management. So we designed general requirements, guidance for organizations in the food supply chain. The important thing of this technical specification is that the reference document is the health code of our organization with and including animal welfare chapters. This can be used by companies and governments to establish animal welfare plans and to ask for third-party certifications with regards to animal welfare. In terms of building capacities, we have worked not just in animal welfare, but also creating a training or in awareness portal, empowering portal where you have all the tools that the members can use to train veterinaries and the public in general on specific issues like animal welfare. We also have the possibility to support or to have the support of our collaborating centers. And we try to link our training with what we call National Animal Welfare Focal Point seminars for veterinaries that are working on animal welfare frameworks. Lately, we have worked e-learning modules. We have designed e-learning modules, and the first is going to be about Chapter 14, which is about the slaughter of reptiles for meat and other products. Finally, I want to mention the last pillar that is very interesting and was useful in the last debates. It is called the Animal Welfare Forum. We have the 5th version of it. The first was very general, and we invited our partners to participate into a forum where we try to openly talk about important issues or issues that are important for the organization and our partners. The first was a very general event, as I said before, about the implementation of our standards and about the opportunities and difficulties that the members have to implement standards. Then we developed one on the transport of animals and another forum that I will mention in detail that is related to what we are talking about now, which is the relationship between animal welfare and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Last year, we organized a forum about animal welfare economics, which was very interesting. And the next one, which is going to take place just in November, is going to be about animal welfare legislation, where we will have different possibilities with the same aim, which is to raise the level of animal welfare of our animals. I want to, highlight the forum that was devoted about sustainable development goals of the United Nations. This was an experience with the support of the European Consortium. It was based on a previous experience that they have, which is called Global Challenges University Alliance. The idea was at that time in June 2018 to value the relationship between animal welfare and the 17 SDGs in a minus to plus 3 scale. -3 is the weakest relationship, and +3 means to have a stronger relationship in both, or taking into account animal welfare and how animal welfare can help to achieve the SDGs. So this activity took place with different participants, the people who came to the forum, to the meeting, and the results were very interesting, in my opinion. In general, the results that we obtained were quite positive. You can see that here the score that participants gave was between 1 and 3, so positives. Because in one direction or in the other direction helped animal welfare and the achievement of the SDGs. And if we get into more detail, we can see the 17 SDGs. Some are more positive or scored as positive, and then less responsible production, responsible consumption, life below water, life underwater, well-being and welfare. And there are other standards, SDGs scored as less positive, such as gender equality, and affordable and clean energy, and reduced inequalities. So this was a very good exercise. Of course, during debates, it was very difficult to know whether we were mentioning pets or production animals or wild animals. And this had an impact on the participants to score or to assign 1 point or another point in this relationship. But in general, the results were positive, as you can see, both in terms of, attaining SDGs and increasing animal welfare to attain SDGs. These decisions, however, can also have a negative impact in animal welfare, because there are some commitments and compromises that we have to take into account, such as economic or financial aspects. We have to take into account that these SDGs can have a negative aspect, and this has to be considered within a political aspect. Also, when one develops different plans to attain SDGs, we have to take these negative aspects into account, or these biases. Thanks to this activity, we published a paper with my colleagues. I want to thank Lisa Killing, Gabriela Olmos, Harry Blockes, and Brigitte Staff Larsson for the cooperation and the support that they have provided in the paper, in the publication of the paper. It is available if you want to review it or if you want to read it. We are going to share the slides. But you can find it online. Finishing with my presentation, I just want to say, I just wanted to show a slide with all the activities that we have developed in the strategy. And all the activities help us have a unique objective. One is the Animal Transport Forum. During the debates, we came to the conclusion that we had to update different transport-related chapters, but also there were different ways to support the implementation of the standards. one way to improve the situation is to encourage activities in Europe, in the region of Europe, which one idea is the whole journey scenario, which is to communicate the ends of the transport of animals so that we can have an effective communication in front of an emergency. TOT is also a project for animal transport and for the different members to, establish networks in terms of animal welfare in transport. Also, something that we are doing, which is a global project of the organization, is what we call the Observatory Thematic Study on Animal Transport, which is a compilation of information to know the level of implementation of our standards. At the end of November, we are going to launch a study with our main points to understand the level of implementation or the type of legislation that exists in each of the countries in terms of animal welfare in transport or during transport. As I said before, the challenges are ahead of us. We have a lot of challenges that have to do with lack of scientific information, cultural, religious, and political aspects. But the essential thing to have in mind is that everything that we do has a scientific base. You know that for adoption, sometimes chapters need to include the other aspects that are part of the complexity of this issue. As I said before, we are always trying to have scientific-based standards that are implemented by all the members at a global level. And this was just my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Leopoldo. Estuviste muy bien. 2 minutos 43.
So you finish in time. Well done.
Muy claro, por supuesto, todo lo relativo a OMSA. Si tenemos alguna pregunta.
I think it's quite clear if anyone has any questions now or from the online public as well. If not, we will continue.
¿No tenemos? Acá, sí, Beatriz. No, es que encandila bastante, tú sabes.
Sorry, Beatrice, did you have a question or not? Because the light here, it doesn't allow me. Oh, we have 2 questions.
No, gracias por darme la palabra.
Thank you for this presentation. So interesting. I feel great after listening to Leopoldo talking about the OMSA and how it has increased the number of topics regarding animal welfare. And I love the fact that this is just the first chapter. Because when I was telling the farmers, let's talk about the 5 freedoms or liberties and then the 5 dominions, and they said, well, this is what the OEA is saying so clearly. OMSA is different, but nevertheless, there was something that I want to ask. When you were showing the logic of the input and outcome, I was wondering, these were like adverse consequences. And at least from the science of animal welfare, we are talking not only about adverse consequences of handling, but also we are checking positive welfare. And I believe that are these only consequences?
Positivo es algo que, desde mi punto de vista, es algo que hay que empezar a empujar.
Because maybe we need to push this a little bit further on to assess and to try to identify the failures and the issues, but also to be able to identify when animals are okay. And I think science, maybe this is quite recent because papers are from 2007 and forward, not before that. But this might be one of the things that I wanted to know. And what about chicken? What about that? About the poultry welfare regulation? Shall I start? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Now you can hear me. Okay. So about the first question about positive welfare, I agree 100%. What I was showing is what we have today. I have participated in a paper with some colleagues from South Africa and Austria and Denmark, talking about the positive aspect, this positive animal welfare, because we should not only care about negative consequences and the things that might have a negative impact, but also the positive things. And I think that's also part of the review of the chapter 7.1. And that's also relevant in the chapters that we are reviewing right now. But I can only show you what we already have today as standards and as what our members have adopted. But I do have the hope that we shall be adding all that as well as the 5 Dominion. We're working on that. I agree with you. And regarding your second concern, to give some information, baseline information, what about the poultry, the chickens? That's a good question, no? What about the chickens? That's a good question. But the organization developed a chapter for the poultry. It was launched in 2020, and because of the pandemic, it was rejected. The countries were not sure about it. There were different opinions about this laying chicken, and some found it interesting, useful, others found it very restrictive, and some countries found it too general. So in the end, the decision was not to adopt it. And the Commission of the Code, which is the one in charge of developing this land code, decided to leave it aside until we had a real will and interest to continue with that work. I'm sorry to say that, at least, because there was a lot of good and hard work with the group of experts developing that. But that's what happened. So far, that's the only answer I can give you. There was a second question? Yes. Go ahead.
Is Emma Meller. I'm from the University of Bristol in the UK. My question comes with apologies for being in English, but also just in case I managed to miss something in your talk. But at one point you were going through a set of codes that have been written for different species and different groups of animals across from different contexts. And I noticed that farmed fish were there, but I didn't see anything for wild caught fish. And the fishing industry, I don't have numbers in front of me, but I would imagine that the fishing industry globally is massive, and so involves the welfare of a large number of individual fish. And so if there aren't any standards or aren't any codes at the minute with relation to wild caught fish, I was wondering why not. And then my second sort of part of the question is, would there be any interest in developing those if they don't already exist?
Yeah. Thanks for the question. I think that, well, the origin of the farm fish standards was to start with those ones. And remember that the organization works through the mandate of the members. Then so far, there's no demand to develop standards that cover wild-caught fish. The same thing for ornamental fish, which is also a big industry, and especially on transport. And today, there is also an aquatic animal health strategy. You can find it in the WOAH website. And one of the activities is to revise the scientific background for the current chapters. That's been the 4 that we have already, and eventually start a revision process for them. But so far, there's no intention to go further than the chapters that are already adopted.
¿Alguna otra consulta más?
Any other question? I would like to make a comment. To add something more about what Leopoldo said, he was excellent.
De OMSA. Uno que me parece importante recalcar que
I think it's relevant to add how regulations, the WOAH are voluntary regulations. They're not compulsory, so countries decide voluntarily to adhere to them and to comply to them. And also, I would like to mention that in the Sustainable Development Goals, animal welfare is not included as such. And I believe that we need to fight to make sure that at least one of these SDGs should be global animal welfare. But everything gets muddled and mixed up, and by focusing on any of the other SDGs, we will get, in the end, to animal welfare. But I found it very interesting, the fact that when you're reading the whole of the list, none of them includes this term, animal welfare. It's not there. So I think that's part of our duty. We need to add a bit to the fight so that maybe tomorrow or next day they readapt them as other things have been updated, like the first chapters of the code, the land code of the WOAH. And we can include a new Sustainable Development Goal or adapt it to have the animal welfare. And I just wanted to mention it just to make things a little bit more spicy. So thank you very much to our 2 keynote speakers, excellent speakers. Do you want to add anything to the mix? No? No, I'm fine. Well, we're slightly late, but it was so worth it. Thank you. And now?
Fuerte aplauso a los dos, realmente muy... Todos se supone que sabemos estas cosas, pero siempre viene...
The idea is that we all know about these things, but it's true that it's good to learn a bit more, to digest these concepts a little bit more. And now we have the oral presentations. The first one is the evolution and the application of a One Welfare model in Manitoba, a practical way of understanding better the relationship between the industry and the government. And we'll have both Jenelle Hambling and Dale Duma. I forgot your name, Dale. He's not in the program, but both of them will be giving the speech.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today to speak about the evolution and application of a way of doing things that we've established in Manitoba and have committed to and are excited to present to you today in hopes of sharing our experiences and relaying the successes and the challenges that we've had in creating and developing this model. Putting it into practice, but also reaping the benefits and the rewards in the successes that we've had. So thank you to Dale for being here and presenting alongside and for introducing me to this wonderful group of people. So thank you very much. And I think we'll get started. Is this the recording?
It looks like the video. Okay.
Oh. I did send the PowerPoint.
But they can hit play. You can watch our video too.
It's up to you. I have the presentation as well.
You can see here,
Yeah.
and you have the okay? Do it?
See what happens.
No.
Hit play.
No, no pasa la diapositiva. Now?
Would you like the presentation?
Oh,
Sure.
okay.
Yeah, we can do that one.
That works. Okay, that's fine. Okay, then just. Okay.
Oh, we can just press play with no sound.
You can just play the video. Just play the video. It's fine. Okay.
Sorry about that.
We'll play the video and then we'll be here for questions afterwards. It's very similar. Oh.
Oh, okay. There you go. That's fine. We'll just speak to the slides.
Okay, then it'll, sure. All right, so eventually it will get to the next page. But anyways, historically, the agri-food system has progressed from being a relatively simple network of farmers raising crops and livestock for the production of food and fiber for their families and local communities, to one of farmers, processors and distributors producing still for their local families and local communities. Since then, things have become increasingly complex. It's now made up of interconnected networks, including everything still from the small producer, but all the way to multinational integrated companies. They're still producing that locally required food and fiber, but now they also produce a massive variety of products that go across the entire world. So recent shifts in this global community have led to many benefits to humanity. However, with these benefits have come certain complexities that lead to emerging challenges that need to be managed. When a local emergency centuries ago would cause a crisis for a local family and maybe tens or hundreds of animals, now, with the movement of people and the international trade that occurs, that same risk can quickly spread across the world in a very short matter of time. But with these public benefits experienced by the human-driven desire for global movement comes increased complexities and a shared responsibility for management of these associated risks. Those involved in emergency response across the agri-food system have become very aware that these challenges require an evolving approach to response to mitigate the potential devastating impacts of these emerging risks. And how we respond can dictate whether a challenge becomes a managed risk or a devastating health, welfare, and economic disaster. So what does this mean, and what does One Welfare have to contribute to the whole issue of emergency management? I mean, traditionally, responses would either be industry or government-led, and this would really be based on local reportable disease legislation. When government had control, it would determine what actions would occur, what compensation programs would be available. And really, the aspects of a response that weren't directly the target of their intended actions would largely be ignored or left for industry to figure out. So when industry led the response, government would not be engaged outside potentially some support programs, financial support programs. Preparedness and response efforts would be worked on in isolation based on our own internal knowledge and with assumptions of the others. So obviously these challenges, they created a lot of frustration for everyone involved. Communication challenges are always essential, they're always complex. And that's just the reality of life, and communication is difficult. But it does cause a lack of situational awareness, and with this, you would get inconsistent messaging and misunderstandings for all involved. This inevitably led to disorganized responses, duplication of efforts, actions that were in conflict with one another, or gaps in your response, leading to prolonged and worsening outcomes. So this could lead to a number of things, including increased human and animal health and welfare issues, increased cost to the sector and the public, Sorry, I'm not going as quickly as I should. Increased psychological stress on everyone and confusion to everyone. So Manitoba recognized this inefficiency and committed to an ongoing and progressive relationship.
So in order to define a new approach and recognizing the challenges that we had struggled with in emergent responses, but also in day-to-day work, we developed what we call the Manitoba One Welfare Model. And in doing that, we really needed to redefine what our roles and relationships were. So in order to do that, we came up with some key elements that we required to focus on to ensure that we are all working towards the same goal. The relationships needed to be collaborative and transparent, and working towards those common goals and striving for continuous improvement. Our partnerships needed to be committed to working together. We had to make that choice and be in alignment consistently. All the while mutually respecting the priorities and the mandates of our partners, recognizing that they might not always be the same, but bringing what we have to the table to work towards that common goal can only lead to success if we choose to apply our strengths and weaknesses together. As well as Dale mentioned, communication is key. To have successful communication, it really only builds to strengthen those relationships and build trust. So, bringing together the strengths and weaknesses of each partner, you can recognize the respective contributions and how to work together to have meaningful results. In our case specifically, I represent the engaged industry, so looking to bring together a highly functional group of informed, knowledgeable people who bring to the table a willingness and a desire to see improvements and consistent progression of our sector. Within our provincial sector, but also within our integrated producers, our small producers, our industry stakeholders, all of the players, the stakeholders at the table come together wanting to work together, to collaborate, to communicate, to move things forward. Our public sector is very proactive in that they take the notion, the concept of the greater good for agriculture as a whole, but also public good. They bring together their expertise of epidemiology in diagnostic capacity, and you bring those two together and you have that real synergy that can drive progress. We're a little bit behind on the slides and I apologize. So here represents our Manitoba One Welfare Model. It's a pictorial graphic and you can notice that it's cyclical in that it never ends. We start with our knowledge and expertise that I just described. You have people and stakeholders at the table that are experts in their field and they want to share their knowledge, they want to continue to grow. And that's what really helps to build those partnerships. We bring in new partners, we build off their knowledge and expertise through open communication. You have that transparency, that choice to collaborate, and that builds in adaptation and learning. So we continue to learn more, and that creates an increase in knowledge and expertise that we can then drive to our partnerships and then continue to communicate. Notice how this is all built on trust. It is all surrounded on trust. And trust takes time to build. These relationships take time to build. It does not happen overnight. It is a choice. The partners come to the table, they choose to communicate in a way that is open, transparent, and when necessary through information sharing agreements, depending on the confidentiality. But I can't stress enough just how important that those relationships are based on that mutual and respect and trust. We have had the opportunity to practice our model on a number of occasions. As I mentioned, we have applied this to emergent situations, which we'll go to in a little bit more detail here, but it really is the standard or the ideology in which we choose to live and work in every day. And I'm very fortunate to have had that opportunity and to have such amazing colleagues and work with such wonderful people who share that mindset and actively choose this collaborative path moving forward. So in terms of animal disease outbreaks in the swine sector, this is really, unfortunately, my wheelhouse. We've had a number of animal disease outbreaks in Manitoba over the past decade, and I've been involved in a fair number of them, responding to, in the last, since 2014, 3 large-scale outbreaks of porcine epidemic diarrhea virus. And we have learned and continue to learn and apply that cycle, or this model, each time, continuing to learn. Each outbreak has been different. There's been different environmental factors, different ownerships, different numbers of farms impacted. So we've had to adjust, we've had to shift and change how we do things, but the model doesn't change. You build that knowledge and expertise, you feed that information to your partners, you're communicating constantly, and you're adapting and learning along the way. I can't stress enough, again, the amount of trust and time that it takes to build those relationships and to earn the trust that they give you with the information that they share. Lastly, in this space, we've been very involved in preparation and readiness planning for African swine fever. And in those preparations, we have created a space where any response that we would have should African swine fever come to Canada would be based on the model, being that that is how we would respond.
So COVID obviously was a very interesting experience for everyone, and it created unique challenges for us as well. There were the direct COVID public health impacts, but also the potential impacts for all of the public health control measures that were put in place. Anytime we removed people either due to illness or public health measures from the agri-food system, we put the entire system at risk, putting our food production flow at risk while also causing animal welfare implications. So we worked very closely with public health, with our industry partners, to make sure that we were able to put the measures in place ahead of time and then respond quickly and effectively when issues occurred to prevent worsening situations and breakdown in the agri-food system. So that included getting vaccines out there, doing public health tracing, helping put proactive measures in place in the face of an outbreak. And we were able to work with industry and our producers and processors to avoid any of the large-scale issues that many others faced. In Manitoba, we also have our share of what we call natural disasters, so flooding and wildfires are common, unfortunately, and we use the same approach, the same model there. Largely it's for situational awareness, but also when responses are required, so we can work together and make sure we mitigate any potential negative outcomes.
I lost the last slide that we would speak to, but ultimately it is our concluding slide, and it talks about the application and again reinforcing those themes, those overarching themes of our model. Every action we take, every consideration of a response that we've made does take into account those overarching themes of human well-being and animal welfare. We recognize that the people that we are working directly in the response as well as indirectly feeding information into our response model can be or are impacted by the emergent nature of the issues that we've faced. And we need to take into account the human well-being of those that are responding, but also working and having that responsibility for overseeing the animals in our care, ensuring that the decisions that we make and the actions that we take, or potentially the non-actions that we take, how that's going to influence the people, but also the animals that we are responsible for. So this is a model that we have, as I mentioned, seen, I'll say, immense success. And we have been recognized both nationally and internationally. If you ask animal health and animal welfare policymakers in Canada, they will look to Manitoba as a bit of an example or an anomaly. And we are very proud of what we have built. And I think Dale, I can speak for Dale and myself that we would be very happy to share as much information as you'll allow me to tell you and provide our insights, provide our knowledge and our experiences. It hasn't come without challenges, it hasn't come without stepping stones and learning, but I think we've gotten to a place now where we are very confident in the pros have certainly outweighed the challenges, and any new emergent event that comes our way is managed in a way where conflict is not propagated. It's now an opportunity to practice the model and continue to learn. So with that, I will leave any closing comments to you. We're good?
Any questions?
Una pregunta. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias por la presentación.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Very interesting.
Comentarles que es algo que yo, I'm sorry, que yo siempre digo, las cadenas nuestras.
I always say that the food industry, especially with pork meat, this is a chain, and a chain is made of different elements. So all the elements should flow all together. Unfortunately, many cases, this is not what happened, because all these links are not adequately fused by trust. Trust is, in the end, what makes things work in every single sector. It's a fundamental element, and you have to build upon it little by little every day. So congratulations. And there was a question. So your turn.
From Compassionate Well Farming. I suppose it's a two-part question. Just thinking about prevention, could you give any more detail about what the Manitoba does in relation to preventing disease like African swine fever? Because I'm just thinking about the scale of farming in North America. It's just mind-blowing, the risk. And also, can you see any animal welfare trade-offs in relation to disease prevention or, the way animals are farmed, I guess, in general?
I'll take the first one if you'll take the second one. In terms of prevention of disease, certainly that is a top-of-mind concern for Manitoba swine producers, Canadian swine producers, and developing a suite of biosecurity programs and continuous learning in terms of what the threats are to our commercial swine sector, as well as how we can work to prevent them. I work a lot in biosecurity policy. I sit on the National Canadian Biosecurity Standards Committee, and I can tell you that there's been no stone left unturned when it comes to identifying contamination pathways. But from there, creating the policy, but also packaging it in a way that is easy for farmers to apply. You want the standards that you're creating to be functional. You don't want them to be a barrier to adoption on farm. And we've been very fortunate to have people in this space, working in this space, who can take the science and functionally apply it on farm. And I think that it has really allowed us to continue to improve the biosecurity processes that we've created, in that we've taken them from policy to farm level practice. And that has been through the entire sector, I'll say value chain, from folks like me working in policy, from our veterinary community, from producer ambassadors, people that are doing the job day in and day out, understanding the why that we're doing it. And I think that human connection to it has really helped. Not only, obviously, there's financial aspects, there's lots of reasons that we practice biosecurity, but understanding the why across the board has really helped increase adoption.
And just quickly on the second part, you're saying, are there trade-offs? I mean, the answer to that would always be yes. There's always trade-offs to every decision we make. I think it's something we tend not to spend enough time considering. There's people have ideas that, oh, well, I don't like industrial agriculture, so I'm going to raise my food in the backyard. That's a trade-off as well. Or I want to be a vegan versus a meat eater. That there's trade-offs there. Like, it can be, all systems can be done well and done poorly. So I think the real trick is to consider all of the systems that are out there, and how do we make the changes within each system to optimize it and mitigate the negative trade-offs and maximize the benefit. So certainly there are trade-offs, but kind of in our ideal world, we're trying to have a system in place that provides the products demanded by society, meets the needs in a sustainable manner that protects the economic stability of the system and all the people. Because the last thing we want to do is have an industry that's really set up for the wealthy and affluent. We want something that meets everybody's needs, but is done well. And that's tricky. That's very difficult to do, but it takes commitment of people like this group here to keep encouraging it and keep working on it. And so that's our hope.
Muchas gracias. Un fuerte aplauso.
Thank you very much. A warm applause for our speakers, Dale and Jenelle. I'm very sorry because before them, there was a comment from Juan Carlos Ramirez Lopez that says that in Spain, there's an animal welfare for fish farms. It's a guideline. I saw it was sent online, and I wanted to mention it, sorry. And now we're going to start with the next speaker. And in this case, we're going to leave the floor to the One Welfare Framework in Latin America, a survey-based exploration of its perception. And we have Debora Racciati from the Buenos Aires University. It's an honor to introduce Debora.
Tu amor por el bienestar.
I know she cares a lot about animal welfare, so it's a pleasure to welcome you. It's your turn.
Thank you, Stella. Can you hear me? Yeah? For me, it is a pleasure to be here and to share what is part of the work that we develop around the One Welfare Framework in Latin America. In this case, we used some surveys to identify the perceptions of professional people working in One Health and animal welfare and the relationship between these two areas. After that, at the end of the survey, we started to ask about the perception of One Welfare. Let me introduce a little bit the subject, but because we know that One Welfare is an excellent tool to help mitigate negative and anthropogenic impacts on different areas such as health, welfare, biodiversity, and environmental sustainability of ecosystems. This has to do with questions that are related to humans, animals, and the environment, which are the three elements that we have to take into account. However, we have not yet explored the current levels of training in the One Welfare Framework or about its implementation in actions and policies. So we lack training and we lack practical implementation of the One Welfare training in concrete actions. So the purpose of this investigation, therefore, was to gather some information on the perception by professionals and students of disciplines such as One Health and Animal Welfare in relation to training about One Welfare. Another idea was to explore perceptions of the practical implementation of this framework. That's why we used a survey. As you can see on the slide, it was approved by the Ethics Committee of the Garrahan Hospital, which is the hospital for children in Argentina, or one of the most important hospitals. The survey took place between March and April this year. We used the Question Pro platform for the survey, and the survey was composed of 42 questions. As you can see, it was quite long, so we expected low participation. However, the people answered them quite comprehensively. The question is long, as I said before, and it had 5 sections. We won't have time to explore all the answers, but we will do with section number 1, which is about demographic information, and we will also deal with section number 5, which is about the One Welfare Framework. Section number 5 is at the end of the survey because we didn't want to have an impact on the responses of people who were just answering the questions. That's why One Welfare was included in the last part of the survey so that everybody could have previous information before going into the One Welfare framework. We selected references from animal welfare and One Health approaches, trying to have or trying to cover all the disciplines that have an impact on animal welfare and on One Health. That's why we sent invitations by email and used the social media. We also used the snowball sampling because the participants were suggested to to forward the survey to people who also could send useful information for the purposes of our study. Since we wanted to have the perception and opinion of the students, we used social media, as you can see on the slide. However, we tried to approach professional people or students that were working on One Health or animal welfare. Inclusion criteria were specified at the beginning of the survey and also in the invitation, but especially in the introduction to the survey, and were as follows: to work or study in One Health or animal welfare context in Latin America. Sometimes people are curious about something. They, can open the survey, and there were some filter questions with exclusion criteria that was related to not knowing about the concept of One Health or animal welfare. If they were familiar with one of the two topics, they were allowed to continue with the survey. If they didn't know about One Health and animal welfare, they were taken to the end of the survey. The manipulation and processing of data was implemented with the R statistical software and Infostat package. And specifically for open answers, we used ethnographic qualitative methods that are normal in these type of surveys, but we wanted to be innovative in a way and to code and categorize the questions, the open field questions, which is very hard. We used artificial intelligence. Then we corrected a little bit the answers because artificial intelligence is not validated yet for this specific purpose, and we manually categorized and validated everything. Since this was a long process, the rest of the questions were just categorized and coded manually. The analysis of categories were developed in conventional ways. As I said before, we were surprised to obtain a lot of answers in just a couple of months. We just filtered the database and removed those who were not respecting inclusion criteria. And I have to say that the survey was so popular that we obtained responses from people who were not part of Latin America, and we couldn't consider them because they were not part of the inclusion criteria. So once we cleaned everything, we can say that we have like 1,054 surveys responded and 735 which were completed until the end, until section number 5. So we obtained a huge amount of responses, which makes us think that One Health and animal welfare have a strong link, which is a little bit the concept of One Welfare. In the map, we can see that we received surveys from 22 countries of the Latin American countries. However, the frequency of responses per country is very important. Argentina is not in the appropriate color because we received around 400 respondents from Argentina, and it was outside of the scale that was planned. That's why Argentina is in gray. After Argentina, we received a lot of answers from Brazil, Colombia, and Mexico. But the reality is that in total, at least we obtained at least one answer from each of the rest of the countries of Latin America. And with regards to the demographic variables, I'm trying to be brief because I have to respect the time. But with regards to age, most of the people were between 31 and 50 years of age, the respondents. And this can be also related to the years of experience that they have. We are going to see, or we can see, that most of them had even more than 20 years of experience in their jobs. If we think about the gender, the self-perceived gender, most or half of the people who answered were women, which is different from the image that was shown from the first Congress of Veterinary, where we see that all people were men. In this case, women were more interested in the concept and in these topics. Also, most of the people who responded to the survey had degrees or undergraduate or postgraduate degrees. Most of them also obtained their degree before 2021. What about the disciplines that we studied? We made a huge effort where the majority of researchers were veterinarians. We made an effort to have responses from other areas or other disciplines. We reviewed the bibliography to detect people who were working, in environment or in human medicine. However, as you can see, in spite of our effort, which is part of the time that we devoted to the survey, 49.7% of respondents came from the veterinary area. And another part, other people of the survey came from biology. Something that we expected or was part of our hypothesis is that most of the people came from education and research backgrounds. We have just a few people coming from administration or public administration, which was something that we were really interested in, or private companies as well, which are not many respondents from private companies. As you can see on the slide, when we asked about the three components what component their work was related, most of the people answer about animals. Animals was the most represented component, but we have a lot of representation of humans and animals. People could choose more than one variable, and the truth is that the environment component was not very well represented. If we take into account section number 5, we asked students and professionals whether they have or they had knowledge about One Welfare framework. 35% of them said yes, and 64% said no. We tried to link this information with previous information that we obtained, but I don't have time to get into much detail. You can have the paper, which is published, by the way. But we consulted as well. We asked them about their training, both undergraduate and postgraduate training. And we offer a 0 to 5 scale. 0 is low or no training about One Welfare, and 5 points were for a full satisfaction, a good training about the One Welfare topic. As you can see, both for undergraduates and postgraduates, the score was low. They consider that their training on One Welfare is low. Especially in undergraduate degrees. Another thing that has to do with the identification of obstacles or problems for the practical implementation of One Welfare framework, which is moving from theory to practice, is just developed or summarized in this slide. As you can see, political issues were mentioned a lot, also education, training of professional people who work in those areas. We also came across the idea of having financial issues, especially in the Latin American countries. Communication was also an issue, quite frequent, as you can see, which is related to the presentation that we listened before. And also socio-cultural aspects are aspects that were also mentioned. I want to highlight some of the limitations that our study has, which is also important from our work. One limitation is that the amount of answers was uneven from the different countries. Another problem or limitation that we found is that medical, environmental, human, and financial science were underrepresented, especially in the environmental component. For our expectations, the truth is that we had a scarce participation of disciplines related to medicine or sociology or economics. As a way of conclusion, because Stella has shown a red flag to me, the truth is that we observed a disparity in the awareness and educational experiences related to the One Welfare framework in Latin America. The majority of the respondents demonstrated a lack of familiarity with the One Welfare framework. And as I said before, education in One Welfare ideas revealed different perceptions based on when studies were undertaken, especially in undergraduate degrees. The majority of respondents were not, didn't agree with their training. The needs that we detected are the needs that you can read on the slide, are further research and commitment to train or to have more information about One Welfare, to improve the curricula of undergraduate and postgraduate programs so that students can be really trained in One Welfare, to implement the One Welfare framework when developing public policies. For the future, our intention is to repeat the survey with a targeted sampling to have more participation from the environmental component. Sorry, thank you for your presentation. Thank you for your attention, sorry. Thank you, Debora. Unfortunately, we are 40 minutes delayed. And I have to say that your survey is really interesting, but we have to leave the answers for the break or for dinner. In the presentation, you have my email.
Pasamos a la siguiente presentación oral. Va a estar a cargo de Beatrice Benedetti de la Universidad de Bologna, Italia.
We're going to listen now to Beatrice Benedetti, which is going to be talking precisely about text mining, a journey through the horse welfare literature in a text mining and topic analysis approach from the University of Bologna in Italy.
Okay, so thank you for being here today and welcome to my presentation. Before I start, let me briefly introduce myself. I'm Beatrice Benedetti. I'm a veterinarian and I'm currently attending my PhD at the University of Bologna with a project on horse welfare assessment. And this is the main reason why I'm here today. This is because I truly believe in the interconnection that there is among horses, humans, and the environment, And I think that this conference could be the best occasion to share knowledge among experts and try to strengthen this interaction. So please today come with me through this journey on horse welfare literature over the past 40 years, which was one of the first studies me and my research team did for my PhD. So why we decided to do so? We decided mainly because regulation regarding animal welfare protection is really challenging, and governments and policymakers are continuously asking for more and more scientific-based evidences. If we consider horses, this challenge is even greater because they have multiple roles within our human society. This role varies from production to companion animals, going through the important reality of sport horses and also working horses. So to analyze this big amount of data, we decided to use the text mining techniques the machine learning techniques of text mining and topic analysis. So before going on, I would like to go a bit more deep in these two techniques. Text mining is a technique that converts text into numeric information with the main aim of studying the word's frequency distribution and the association that there is among the most frequent words. While topic analysis is a method that is helpful to discover semantic connections that are hidden in a group of documents. So which were the reason why we decided to do this study, because in scientific production in recent years has had an exponential growth, and scientists and researchers need to find a rapid but still valid approach to analyze such a vast amount of data. So the main aims of the study were firstly to describe how the literature of horse welfare evolved during the years. Then we wanted to identify which were the most frequent words used and their associations. And finally, we wanted to identify which were the most studied research topics, which enable us also to highlight where scientific-based evidence is still needed. So this study could be helpful for academics to have a different perspective on horse welfare literature trends, but from a broader point of view could also provide horse-related people with more information about where are the gaps in knowledge in horse welfare. So as I said before, we used the methods of text mining and topic analysis to analyze the horse welfare literature over the last 40 years. We inserted in Scopus bibliometric database the keywords that you can see in the slide, so horse welfare, equine welfare, and the others. And we received back more than 6,000 of records that were then screened, removing duplicates and considering only the ones that dealt with horse welfare and behavioral sciences. All the screening process is summed up at the right part of the slide. And at the end of this screening process, we retained 801 records that were finally analyzed. So moving on to the results, as I said before, the first aim of the study was to describe the evolution of the horse welfare literature over the years. So descriptive statistics was performed on the corpus of records, and we found that fortunately literature on horse welfare is exponentially growing and increasing over the years. Then we can also say that Europe, as expected, has had a pioneering and driving role in this context. But moreover, records mainly came from horse culture countries such as UK, Germany, or Italy and France. If we move on to the text mining results, the text mining revealed which were the most frequent words used, in particular transport, behavior, pain, and stress were the first 4 words. And these highlighted how different aspects of welfare have been studied in the last decades. But another interesting result of text mining is the word association. In particular, we found some association with the word transport and the word road and unload. In fact, road transportation is the most common way to transport horses, and the moments of unloading and loading have been widely investigated because they can cause health problems, behavioral problems, and also personal injuries. Just to cite another word association, the word owner was associated with the difficult context of euthanasia, which is one of the most discussed topics in all companion animal welfare. Here we have the topic analysis results. As you can see, the corpus of records was grouped into 9 topics, and based on the first 15 words and on the papers included inside each topic, authors decided for a name, for a label of these topics. As you can see from the labels, it was confirmed the multidisciplinarity of welfare also when talking about horses. Unfortunately, we do not have enough time to cover all these 9 topics, but I would like to go a bit more deep inside some of them. So first of all, the first topic on stress indicators and responses. Inside this topic, there were papers on behaviors in different stressful situations, such as weaning or transport, but also papers that analyze how to measure and reduce stress. In fact, researchers are continuously searching for new and more welfare-friendly way to measure stress. And for this reason, blood cortisol has been widely substituted by hair cortisol or salivary cortisol. This topic revealed how negative welfare indicators, such as stress, have been widely studied in last years. And in the context of negative welfare indicators falls also the second topic on pain and mental state evaluation. As all of you know, horses are prey animals, and for this reason, recognition of pain on them is challenging because they tend to hide their pain-related behaviors. So researchers are focusing their attention on finding new and objective way to assess pain. And so different pain scales have been developed, not only including clinical parameters, but also including behaviors and postures. Then I would like to talk together about the topic 3 and the topic 9. Both of them analyze the interaction that there is among horses and humans, but the topic 3 dig deep in the specific relationship that there is among the rider and the sport horses. Most of the papers of this topic dealt with different training methods and the welfare impairment that they can cause. Finally, I would like to talk about the 6th topic we found. So on the welfare of working horses, working equids are still a diffuse reality worldwide, and especially in rural and peri-urban areas where they are the main source of income for the owners, which sometimes use them till exhaustion. So for this reason, researchers are trying to find a way to assess welfare of these animals in an easy way and try to discuss with owners and government to guarantee to these horses a good life standards. It is worth highlighting that even if topic analysis revealed such a specific and niche topic, it didn't point out an important other topic, which is on the welfare of at slaughter of production horses, which is still a diffuse reality. So going to the conclusion, the most important topic that we found focused on stress and pain assessment, and this highlighted how negative welfare indicators have been studied the most over the years. But on the contrary, topic analysis did not point out some other research areas, as I said before, the production horse welfare, especially at slaughter, and positive welfare indicators. So finally, I can say that this study confirmed, fortunately, the growing interest in horse welfare, but also highlighted the need for more studies, especially on positive welfare. So I hope I've given you a wider view on what horse welfare literature was over the years. I'm glad to say that the paper on this review has been accepted for publication. And thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions, I would be very pleased to answer them.
Muchas gracias. Fuerte aplauso, muy interesante. El tema es un...
Very interesting topic. Thank you for that. Sometimes we tend to think that equines, especially for production and meat production, tend to be ignored, the sacrifice, the slaughterhouse, the transportation. Let's see if there's any question in the room. There's one in the back.
Beatrice, for this excellent presentation and well done. It's really a fascinating research. Congratulations. Just information maybe you have provided during the presentation. How long you went back with the data collection that you on tracking the wars, and have you just limited to English, or did you use other languages like Chinese or? Thanks.
Thank you for your question. We went back till 1980, and the research was just on Scopus, so we did not include grey literature, and the language was just English, so we did not include other language. And all this analysis has been done just reading the titles and the abstract of the papers, not all the papers.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. There's another question in the room. Is there any other question? Well, I think you were quite clear, Beatrice. Thank you very much. Congratulazione. And a warm applause.
Vamos a pasar entonces al siguiente.
Let's move on to next speaker. The title of his presentation is The Capacity of the Members of the WOAH to Face Animal Welfare Experiences, Emergencies in these natural disasters in Europe. We have Gary Vroegindewey, and we are going to have the Zoom or his video.
Okay. I'm Gary Vroegindewey, the professor of One Health for Lincoln Memorial University, College of Veterinary Medicine, and along with my colleague, Dr. Paulo de Villa, who is a technical officer in disaster management and animal welfare with the WOAH sub-regional representation in Brussels. And we're going to talk about the European WOAH members' capacity to deal with animal welfare during natural disasters. With this, to give some background on the European platform for animal welfare, in their second action plan, they looked at including animal welfare and disasters as a priority subject. And with that, they were tasked with exploring and developing possible activities for WOAH members' disaster management and risk reduction, following the WOAH guidelines. And you can see on the left and the right two of the guidelines that have been written in order to help WOAH members develop their own disaster management and risk reduction. With this, there was a pilot project with IVS in Teramo, Italy, that worked with multiple countries, 10 countries, to help them develop their contingency plans for disasters. There was an initial workshop that we participated in Teramo, that following through with the countries developing their plans, reviewing the plans, and then finally doing a virtual tabletop exercise to evaluate the plans. 3 of the 10 countries, Bulgaria, Romania, and North Macedonia, completed their entire plans, and other countries are continuing to work on those as we speak. With this, after this, we did a consultative role in looking at what the platform can do for member countries. And out of this came 5 recommendations that you can see on the right-hand side. With number 1 is mapping and prioritizing the competencies for capacity building. With this, if we take a look at all of the recommendations, starting off at about the 11 o'clock position, we had the mapping and prioritizing capacity for disasters, looking at workshops and simulations, continuing around the circle, how we transfer the knowledge from what we learn in the Balkan countries to other countries, supporting members as they develop their collaboration mechanisms and developing guidelines and tools. So what we're going to talk about today is the first step of this, is mapping where the countries were. And so before we know where we can go, we need to know where we are. And in this survey by the member countries of the European region for WOAH, that 54 countries were included, and 92% of them completed the survey, which gives an indication of how strongly people were interested in this because of the high participation rate. When we ask them about is animal welfare incorporated into their national, regional, or local regulatory framework, and these are the disaster frameworks, we see that 52% had those incorporated. So we still have about half that did not have animal welfare and disasters covered in their national frameworks. Then we looked at, is there a competent authority? And a competent authority is the one that has the ability to deal with animal welfare issues during disasters. And in this case, the majority, 62%, did have a competent authority. Often that competent authority for a country is their national veterinary services, but in some countries, it can be another authority. But that still leaves about 31% that had no authority or limited authority to deal with it. So it presents a gap that we deal with. When we talk about the types of species that are involved, it's not surprising that livestock were the highest because this is the normal priority for competent authorities and national veterinary services. But we also have companion animals, wildlife, zoo and aquatic, laboratory animals, and other animals that are indicated. And some of the countries indicated that they just covered all animal species. When we looked at specific contingency plans, we asked about the number and types of different disasters. And there was a broad range of natural disasters that were covered. But the 3 most commonly reported were floods, fires, and earthquakes. When we asked, did they have specific contingency plans to deal with these different national disasters, 2/3, 67%, said they did not have contingency plans. And that's why what you see with the action plan, where we were helping countries build contingency plans, did the pilot project with our Balkan countries, and then moving on to how we can replicate that throughout the region. When we ask about training, again, almost 3/4, 73%, said they had no training for animal welfare and natural disasters. And if we take a look at where the major gaps or shortages to prepare them to have disaster preparedness and response in disasters, the 4 top regions that we see were budget, trained personnel, equipment and supplies, and legal authority. But you can see on the chart that there were several others, including forensic surveillance systems, reporting capacities and authorities. So there were several areas where people did have gaps in their preparedness and response for animal welfare and disasters. Then we asked, what could the WOAH, at the time it was OIE, but at this point WOAH, what could the platform on animal welfare for Europe contribute for them? And if we take a look at the gaps and then compare to what they were looking for, they're very similar. That we're seeing they wanted live and online training. And so things are in process right now to provide online training for member countries, not only for Europe, but for all of WOAH's members. They look for support in country collaboration and mutual support. How can they develop programs to assist each other when they're dealing with a large-scale disaster event? And finally, we saw that more than half, 34 of the 54, were looking for guidance and legislative support so they can get the animal welfare into their national and regional legislation. They're looking for more disaster management training and exercises, and looking to provide a European platform disaster management summit and workshop. So observations that we came out of this is that there's certainly improvements since we did our first survey of European world countries in 2013, and several areas where we improved in their disaster management, but we still see significant gaps existing in many countries in the areas of legal authorities, contingency planning, standing operating procedures, training, exercise evaluation, budgeting, and resources. And the WOAH European platform for animal welfare will use the results of these specifically to inform the processes to strengthen our veterinary services of member states and prepare for and respond to natural disasters as it pertains to animals and animal welfare. Would like to acknowledge our researchers that were involved in this, Dr. Karen Grzinski, Dr. Daniel Handler, and Dr. Paulo Delavea, that were involved in the study that we created. And this one has been accepted for publication. It's currently in preprint online, but will still soon be available for no charge in the open access arena. And with that, I thank you for your attention, and we'll be happy to take any questions that people have.
Muchas gracias, Gary.
Thank you very much, Gary. Excuse me, we are having sound problems, but unfortunately we don't have time for questions. We are quite delayed, and if someone wants to ask a question, he or she can write the questions on the chat, and we are going to gather everything and get them to you, Gary, so that you can respond them later.